These are the Chuck 70s. So these are the premium version of the regular Chucks. They're supposed to be made out of better materials, better construction, and kind of more like the original Chucks before they are quality dropped, I guess. So we're gonna cut them in half and compare them to the regular Chucks that we cut open last time and see if they're worth the extra money. We're closing in on 100,000 subscribers, and thank you guys so much for all your support through all this crazy coronavirus stuff. A lot of our sales have dropped in the regular business, so all your support on the YouTube channel makes a huge difference. So if you haven't liked and subscribed and commented and done everything else that the algorithm and YouTube gods demand, consider doing it. It makes a huge difference and allows me to keep buying these shoes and cutting them apart so that you can have a in-depth knowledge of what you're buying, and so you're not just wasting your money on hype. So stay safe out there. Thanks for all your guys' support. We got some cool Toasty Gang shirts in the works. I got some mock-ups from the artists and they're freaking cool. So look forward to that. And now let's talk about the shoes. So these are the Converse Chuck 70s. I got them in red this time instead of black just to make it easy to tell the difference. They're $85 on their site as opposed to the $55 that you can get the regular Converse Chuck Taylors at. They have a 12-ounce canvas upper, which feels like it's a lot thicker than the other ones. It's got a vulcanized rubber sole, and that's pretty much it. It's a pretty simple shoe. So now let's kind of go through the differences between these shoes that we can see right off the bat before we cut them in half. Kind of the surface level stuff before we really dissect them. So I wore them for a couple days, not a long-term review, but I find the original Converse is a little uncomfortable. The comment section of when I cut these in half was just like full of people telling me how wrong I was and how comfortable they are. So a lot of people find them comfortable. I just stand on concrete for 8 to 10 hours a day, and I find them a little uncomfortable. But the 70s were a lot more comfortable. They're more like a regular sneaker where you've got a lot more padding in them. My foot was a lot more cushioned throughout the day, and I just think they're a higher quality sole construction. There's more layers in there, I think. So they're pretty comfortable. Not the most comfortable sneaker, but they're more comfortable than the originals, and I would say they're probably even more comfortable than just like the regular Vans. So some of the most noticeable differences between the two, the big one that I noticed right off the bat was the patch on the side. On the 70s, it's a lot thicker. It looks like it's made out of some leather and it's embossed, versus the regulars. It looks like it's just it's kind of screen printed on, is my guess. It's kind of a thin rubbery feel. Next thing I noticed was there's an extra bit of stitching on the 70s. So there's a little bit of stitching right here that's not on the regulars. I'm not sure if it actually does anything. I think it's more for looks than anything. And then also another big thing I noticed was the rubber on the sides and on the toe cap. The 70s is like a really shiny, glossy finish on it, versus the regular ones is just kind of that matte rubber look. The shoelaces are also a little bit different. The 70s have a higher quality shoelace. The regulars are just a really cheap, not as thick shoelace, if that matters to anybody. On the back of the heel, the little tag is different as well. The 70s has a more classic style tag. The regular ones have just the plain one that's on all of them. One thing I didn't notice until I had them on was this binding tape around the outside on the 70s. It rides up a lot higher than the regular ones. It's a little bit more subtle if you're just looking at them, but once you have them on, it kind of comes up the side so you can see it more on top of your foot, and it kind of stands out. And then, like I said earlier, the canvas is a different thickness. The 70s feels like it's a lot thicker, a lot higher quality canvas, versus the regular ones is just a thinner, cheap canvas. As far as we know, we'll see better when we cut them in half. And the soles are slightly different, same pattern, but just a little different execution on them. I've heard, and let me know if you guys know if this is true or not, if it's just a rumor, that this felted stuff in the regular soles allows these to be classified as slippers, thus making the import fees lower for Converse, and hopefully they're passing that savings on to the consumer. So does anyone know if that's actually true? Because if so, that's a really interesting thing. But the 70s do not have that. So does it matter? Probably not. These might be a little more slippery, but it's just one of the differences. And then moving to the inside, so the 70s have this little tag here I think this was on like the original runs of Converses through the early decades, I guess. And the regular ones do not have it, they just got the tag. And the 70s also have a removable insole. It's got a foam layer on top with a thicker, it looks like a blown rubber layer below that only goes halfway through the footbed, giving you that little bit of a heel and a little bit of heel cushioning. The regular Converse don't have a removable insole, it's just glued in there. And that's pretty much it for the outside differences. So initial impression, without cutting them in half, I think the 70s are a higher quality shoe. I don't know if they're $30 higher quality. It's got a thicker canvas and maybe a better binding tape on the outside, but I like the looks of them better and it's higher quality canvas. But walking down the street, no one's gonna notice if you have one or the other. It would take a pretty keen eye to spot the difference between the 70s and the regulars. But to really see what the true difference is and if there's any substantial difference on how these are gonna wear and the longevity of them and how comfortable they're gonna be, I'm gonna cut them in half. Well, cut the 70s in half because we already did these ones. And if you wanna see me cut these ones in half and I have more in-depth analysis and review of the regular Chuck Taylors, I'll put a link in the description and put one of the cards up here or here, wherever they are. But I digress. Let's cut these 70s in half and then we'll compare the cross sections of them to see if they're really worth the extra money. Well, that was not my straightest cut. So let's see what's inside. So there's actually more good stuff in here than I expected. So underneath of the insole or insert, there's a layer of this pour-on type material. And as far as I understand, like a pour-on foam kind of acts like a non-Newtonian liquid, if you've ever seen that, where it's really good at absorbing shock, but is also malleable when it's kind of slowly compressed, if that makes sense. And you've got like a nice thick layer of rubber for the sole. And then the canvas, I thought it was one heavy piece on the outside and then the liner on the inside, but it's actually two pieces on the outside and then a liner on the inside. So it's kind of interesting. But to really see what else is in here and to have a full breakdown so we can really analyze the two different versions, the regulars and the 70s, I'm gonna cut the rest of this out so we can see what else is inside. Okay, got it, the rest of it torn apart, not super successfully, but nevertheless, torn apart. So let's go through the rest of the differences, starting with the soles. So the soles on the 70s is a little bit thicker and a little bit softer than the regulars. And then you go to a layer of Poron on the 70s versus the regulars is just a thin fiberboard that doesn't really provide any extra comfort. And then both of them from there are similar moving up because you've got a blown rubber heel pad topped with a low density layer of foam and then canvas on top. And then from there, if we move up to the counter, that little area near the heel that has a little bit of structure to it, the 70s, it goes up a little bit higher. And I think that's to help keep that high top structure higher so it's not flopping around as much versus the regulars just has a typical rounded heel counter. At the first of this video, I thought that the stitching on the outside near the toe area might just be for looks, but it actually sews together an extra layer of canvas on the inside. And I think what that might be for is the biggest fail point on Converse as far as I've experienced with the 20 sets of Converses I've had, is right where that toe crease bend area has a lot of friction and movement. It starts to separate and starts to fail in that area. So I'm wondering if that little extra layer of canvas and sewing right there is to help prevent that and give it a little bit extra structure and a little bit extra strength there. I think that's why it's there. I'm not sure. Let me know what you guys think. Why would they put an extra layer there? And then to the binding tape that goes around the shoes that binds the sole to the upper. The 70s has a layer of reinforced binding tape where there's little threads going through it that give the rubber a little bit more strength and a little bit more rigidity and maybe prevents it from stretching is my guess. And there's also a little extra layer of tape that goes on the inside that the regulars don't have. But as for the overall structure of how it's constructed, it looks like it's built the same way. So overall, are the 70s a better shoe than the regulars? I would say they're a significantly better shoe. For all those reasons we just went through, I think it's a better constructed shoe. It's gonna last longer. It's got more layers to be more comfortable. It's got this really nice layer of Poron or a memory foam type foam on the inside that's gonna help with those long days of standing on concrete. And is it worth $30 extra? To me it is. I'd rather have a more comfortable Converse. I think I'm gonna buy me a pair in black. So that's what I think. What do you guys think? Do you think it's worth the extra money? Would you rather have just the originals? Yeah, let me know what you think if you've had any experience with these, and thanks for watching. Thanks for watching me through all these crazy times. Go binge watch the rest of my videos. I don't know. Thanks for all your support, and see ya.